fast break.
From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown. Make a pick and roll with it. Make a pick.
Welcome into this game day edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break. I'm Doug Kezirian alongside professional bettor Chris Macero ahead of Game 6 of the NBA Finals and potentially the final game of the 2024-25 NBA season. So much to get through, and we have two WNBA games to discuss at the end of the show which have the same exact point spread and total. A little fun fact for you on the strange but true outcome of the WNBA betting card. But obviously, the focus of today's show is on Game 6 of the finals. We have a potential injury. We have a subtle line move in the point spread and the total that we'll dive into. Chris, good to be with you, my man.
Yeah, it's great to be back talking some basketball. A little bit sad, though. It might be the final game of the year. And then we're just on the baseball train the rest of the way. Hockey's over. And we got, less than 100 days, though, to college football. And NFL will be right here before you know it. So it's a little bittersweet that it might be the final game. But let's see if we can end on a high note if it is indeed the final game of the NBA season.
Yeah, remarkable excitement between the NBA and Stanley Cup and their championship, the finals. And obviously, you mentioned maybe we'll get a Game 7. We didn't get it in the hockey, but both series really, really dramatic and thrilling, at least for the first 4 games and even 5. So we had some, as fans, we were treated. But you're right, hockey's gone away. Maybe NBA tonight. And the narratives and the subplots. I mean, we got injuries to all stars, things like that. Halliburton's status, officially a game time decision. What do you expect to see here?
Well, you hope he's fine, but you can just kind of read the tea leaves, and it's that same injury that all these stars are getting, and you'd hate to have him go out and do something, really bad to his calf, and then it becomes an Achilles, i.e., Tatum, Dame, Kevin Durant, Kobe, the same situations. They've talked about reducing the season, and hopefully at some point they come to an agreement on that, because I feel like we got to give these guys a lot of grief, but they are playing, just exerting their bodies to a level where maybe it's just too many games. Like these injuries, you don't want to see happen, and I'd hate for him to go out there tonight and try to push it. I was listening to Tim Legler a little bit last night. He's saying it's not like a pain thing, but it's more of like, oh my God, if I push it a little too far, maybe I'm going to tear my Achilles and I'm going to be out for a whole year. So I'd hate to see that happen. This Indiana team's fun to watch. They're an exciting team. Halliburton's one of the more exciting players in the league. Whether he's a superstar or not, that's to be debated. He has these superstar type games that he kind of, falls off the table a little bit. I'd hate to see him get injured, but at the same time, you kind of need him. I mean, there's no way they're going to be able to beat OKC 2 in a row without him. But if he comes out there early and then they take him out due to injury, you kind of have the feeling that Pacers might see the writing on the wall. They might start hanging their heads. They might say, do we really want to go back to OKC for the inevitable? And maybe OKC just takes care of business in 6. If he's healthy, who knows? Maybe they catch fire again. Maybe they start shooting the 3 a little bit better than they have in this series. That's been the key for me in this series. Pacers, I've mentioned it a bunch of times. If they shoot over 38.2%, they're going to most likely win the game. They've only done that once in this series. And that's been kind of that's a problem. But the reason they're not shooting 38.2% is obviously because of the stifling defense of Oklahoma City. So a lot of different storylines tonight. I'm hoping for the good of the player that he doesn't do anything crazy, pushes it too hard, ends up being out for the year with some catastrophic injury. Hopefully that does not happen. But I do have a feeling that he's probably going to try it because it's an elimination game. But at some point during the game, he's going to be pulled out just for precautionary reasoning.
And to your point about potential damage long term, I mean, these guys can get painkillers, get shot up with something. So it can certainly get away from you as an injury. And I guess that's the question, because the Pacers have been great at home, right? In these playoffs. The Thunder have not been good on the road. We have a slight line change here from 6.5 to 6. So Indy's taking some money. The over-under is now at 222. It was 222.5. And given that the Thunder are 1-8 ATS on the road in this postseason, the only cover was kind of bogus. What do you expect from Indy in terms of an effort tonight, given this Halliburton uncertainty? You mentioned the possibility of them hanging their heads a little bit. What do you expect before we are able to see anything right now with the current market?
Well, I feel like if Indiana has any chance, they have to start fast. Because if they don't start fast, then they're going to be hanging their head. They're going to be like, we're not going to go back. Halliburton's, not playing well, or he's already out of the game. But if they start fast and Halliburton's okay, that changes everything. Because like you mentioned, they've only covered OKC Thunder have only covered one game on the road this entire postseason, and it was the worst beat of all time. If you had Indiana like I did, getting 6.5, winning by 10 late in the third, not scoring more than one free throw the last 4 minutes of the game. Just an incredibly bad beat. So that's their only cover, like a fluky one. So it's kind of, hey, how do you lay OKC, when they haven't covered? But I just think it's a little bit of a different angle because of the injury to Halliburton. I don't expect the same game out of McConnell. I'm not sure who's going to step up. I know Siakam is the main guy, but you're going to need one of these other guys to show up a little bit like a surprise, whether it's a Matherin again, or it's a Nesmith or an Emhart. Not sure which one. And it's interesting, all four of those guys, including McConnell, all their prop points are all like teetering around 11.5, 12 points. So it's interesting because they don't know who's going to step up either. It's one of those guys has to have a big game. Maybe Matherin has the breakout game again. He had the 27 points in game 2. Excuse me, not game 2, game 3. You just don't know. Yeah, you just don't know. You don't know. I mean, they have enough guys to do it, but everyone's saying, let's go with McConnell props because Halliburton's going to be out. It's really tough to duplicate that type of game when you're just a role player. So I'm not expecting the same outburst again from McConnell. I haven't put my finger on who's the guy I think is going to have the breakout performance. But it's probably going to be one of them. I feel like Siakam is, he's the solid guy. He's going to not deviate. He might get a little bit more going tonight because, Halliburton's not going to be touching the ball as much if he is indeed hampered. So I would probably stick with, I would stick with some Siakam stuff. I'm not sure what other player I'd be looking at props at the moment. But it's just all dependent upon Halliburton. And we'll have to see in the first quarter what exactly he might have nothing. So it's kind of tough to go into this game feeling strong one way or another about the point spread when one of the best players, if not the best player on the home team, is a major question mark. So for me right now, I'm just going to kind of let it breathe and see what happens in the first quarter.
Yeah, it's really tough. So no play for you. Yeah, I talked to an odds maker. This was about load management, and these types of situations apply. And you see the Halliburton prop of 13.5 on your screen. I said once, like, how do you put up a line? He's like, what do we care? We're going to get two-way action. As long as we put the right ballpark, it's going to be fine. We'll let the bettors decide, especially sharp money coming in. The real issue is the bettors. They're the ones. They're not getting two-way action. We're getting two-way action. We just have to just trade it. They have to pick a side and an angle. So you're right. Halliburton can start and then play 8 minutes and shut it down. Or he can have a really good game because he's feeling good. So we're the ones that have the risk, whereas the house just moves the juice and maybe moves off a number, but they're the ones who just want to bring in the two-way action. So it makes a lot more sense why the market has a number and that we're the ones that have to bet it. So you see some other over-unders out there with Siakam you mentioned. Maybe it's a monster game from someone like Jalen Williams again on the OKC side, but Halliburton 13.5 is certainly compelling. What about the over-under? So game 5 snuck over with a big second half. Game 6 total keeps trickling down like we see often in a series. Each number keeps coming down. We're at 222. Again, Halliburton uncertainty. How would you play the total, if at all?
I don't have a play on the total right now. I could see this game going one of two ways. One is that OKC just gets out to a bigger lead, and it's an under game with a kind of a waltz to the NBA title, where the Pacers are just not as engaged, and you get like a 20-point win, and the game probably goes under. Or maybe Indiana finally catches fire from 3. They shoot 40%. They heat up early. They get some of the others involved. Maybe Neesmith has a big game. Nembhard has a big game. They've had big games in the past. Maybe Siakam reverts back to the game 2 against the Knicks, where he had, which was interesting to me, he's only averaging 14 shots a game in the OKC series in the finals, with no more than 15 shots on any game. In that Knicks game, he attempted 23 shots. He made 15 shots from, 15 shots overall. He was 3 of 5 from 3. He got to the line 8 times, made 6 free throws. He had the big game, 38 points. He needs to be more involved, especially if Halliburton's not going to be there. I could see maybe Siakam getting 20 shot attempts. So if that happens, and maybe that opens up, he's down low. Maybe he's also a pretty good passer for a big man. 5'5", 4'4", and 3 assists. So he's getting some assists every game. Maybe they catch fire from 3 and it's an over game. If they can get to that, 38.2% or higher on threes, Indiana has a great chance to win the game. So I could see it going 2 ways. I don't have a play on the game. I do think the 222 is a little bit of an overreaction, although we've seen under money coming all week, open at 240, 224 and a half, 225, all the way down to 222. But if anything, I would probably lean a little bit over, just hoping that the Pacers home crowd gets the team going and they can revert back to that 3-point percentage, which has been so prevalent for them throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, it's like, again, let's say Halliburton's nicked up and, they have to shuffle their lineup, and McConnell doesn't have that second quarter first action, right? He has to come in earlier, and maybe that disrupts their ebb and flow. So that's a part of it too, in terms of the overall, because that second unit, you mentioned Mather in game 3 with 27 off the bench, but McConnell had the 5 steals. That was all part of that surge at the beginning of the second quarter. So there's a lot to dissect, and there's a giant domino effect, and that's sort of the biggest impact of all of this. You mentioned the total, the side, all the props, but what's the path to success, to borrow a fight phrase, in the OKC victory, right? They can beat you any which way, but you're right. They could just clamp down on D, because the reason these over-unders in a series typically are lowered. Now, I'm not saying they always go under, but at least the market goes lower, is because you get more and more familiar facing the other team's defensive sets and offensive sets. So you're more comfortable with their slip screens. And the Pacers run a lot of unique sets and offense. So they'll do a drag screen, but then also run a guy through it. They'll just do a lot of misdirection. And when you face a team throughout the course of the regular season, A, your defense isn't that intense, but B, you were facing another team before that, so you're not as accustomed. Well, now this is the 6th straight time this Thunder defense is facing the Pacers offense. And there's only so many wrinkles Carlisle can put in. There's only so many designed plays he can implement out of a timeout. So for the most part, this number 1 rated OKC defense in the entire NBA is quite familiar with the Pacers offense. That's why the total comes down. I used to bet the unders and the Warriors, right? The peak Warriors before Durant. As the series, just all their real slip screens and all their real complicated stuff, teams were more focused and the defense intensifies. So I do lean to the under. To your point, I think the market has over adjusted, but I think there's a scenario where the Pacers do hang their head. So I have more conviction on the under than I do anything on the side.
Yeah, it's a great point too that you mentioned that they've kind of seen all their passing lanes and their other plays and their screens, because in that fourth quarter you could see, and I think this might be the fact that Halliburton was just obviously he's a half a step slow due to the injury, but to turn the ball over 23 times in 4 straight possessions in the fourth quarter when you had cut the lead to 2, and then you just basically handed OKC the game. But you got to give them credit for just being such a good defensive team. They're just on top of it. They're just anticipating on the steals so well, the passing lanes. I mean, I was joking with you and humans the other night. I watched the game with my mother, and she said she's never seen so many passes, so many turnovers in one quarter. I go, it was unbelievable. Like, they were just handing the ball off to OKC. You got to give credit to OKC. They're obviously a great defensive team, but I feel like Halliburton being a step slow, and some of the other guys not handling the ball as much as usual in that situation, just ended up turning into that many turnovers. So if Indiana's going to turn it over 23 times, they have no chance to win the game. They're going to need to shoot a lot better than 35%. They just have to. They have to get up above 38%, 40% from three. So that'll be, you can't really predict it. If they do that, the game's probably going to go over. If they don't, you're right. It'd probably be a Thunder and under type of game, especially if they're getting those type of turnovers.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to get there. I mean, there's a scenario, I guess, where OKC plays super tight, right? The young guys close out games, always the toughest. You hear veteran coaches say that a lot, which I think it could apply here with the Thunder. Although they've come of age, we've had Albert Nguyen on the show, and he thought that OKC team really grew up in the Nuggets series. They pushed through, and we saw that come alive when they were up 2-1 against Minnesota. T. Wolves threw everything out them, and they resisted and took the 3-1 series lead with the big road win in Game 4. And we've seen this Thunder team really, impressive win in Game 4, dominant win in Game 5, all things considered. But I do think there's a scenario where the Thunder could win a high-scoring game and a low-scoring game. I am more inclined to believe it's a low-scoring game that they could win, 105-90, one of those things where the Pacers just ran out of gas and the track meet of a season, right? This is a tired team, high pace, high scoring, and just missing one of their horses. Like, yeah, their depth's great, but Halliburton's plus minus, especially game one when they were down 15 and all those. Like, he was like +3 or something ridiculous in game one, despite them being down double digits nearly the entire game. So I think this has potential to be a Thunder cover. And at 6, I'm intrigued here a little bit. But I think Pacers team total under 108.5 at Bet Rivers right now is something that certainly has my interest, especially with this team being such a bad first quarter matchup, I guess it is, in this series, that OKC's dominated the first quarter and first half lines throughout.
Yeah, they have. I've been on the wrong side of the team total. I had team total over
Me
first
too.
half. And they scored in game 5. They scored right off the bat. They had 12 points in the first 3 minutes, and I think they finished the first quarter with 22 points. So, not exactly what you were looking for the final 9 minutes, but it really does come down to the defense because OKC gets a lot of their points in transition, and their defense is a big result of that. But a lot of times, they kind of just play with their food a little bit, and it was shown in the fourth quarter. Last game. I mean, how do you blow that lead? It comes all the way down to 2 points. So you can't have that much confidence in OKC laying 6 points on the road. And we don't know Halliburton. I get it, but they've only covered one game on the road, and it was an absolute miracle. So I'm going to try to let this game play out a little bit. Hope that maybe Indiana gets a lead early. And then maybe if you can grab, OKC at, plus the point somehow or at even money on the money line to just win the game, I'd feel a lot more comfortable with that than laying 6 points before the game. So I'm just going to sit it out for the beginning, see how Halliburton plays. Hope to get a live line at OKC at some point at a reduced rate.
Okay. First half, Thunder -2.5. They've been pretty dominant. I believe they've covered all of them except for game 3. I'm not sure, going off memory there. Don't quote me on that. So we've touched on the props for Halliburton. That was, that's a puzzle in and of itself. How about SGA? 0 assists in game 4, 10 in game 5. What do you make of SGA in game 6? Because he got over his points prop only because of 7 free throws in the last minute in the last game. So what do you make of this sort of experience that is SGA and his running mate coming off a 40 burger?
Yeah, well, I'm a little bummed that he got 0 assists because that pretty much totally derailed my chances at the SGA most assists in the finals, plus 500. Although he still has an outside shot. If, say, Halliburton doesn't play, Halliburton has a 36-30 lead over him right now. Maybe SGA throws up another 10 burger and Halliburton doesn't play or only has a couple assists. So I'm not going to play anything. I'm just going to, hold out hope that something crazy happens where maybe SGA has a lot of assists and Halliburton doesn't play that much. As for Jalen Williams, I'd be looking to go under. Unless you're the team's A superstar, it's very, very rare to post back-to-back monster efforts like that. Under 23.5 points, might be looking at that. It's a lean to the under, definitely. It's a little light considering how the potential he has.
Right.
And he is shooting very well, and maybe he just got a super confidence boost last game that will ride into game 6. But I don't anticipate him having that type of big game on the road. So to put up back-to-back monster efforts, not something I'd be looking for. I'd be leaning towards the under on his point prop, along with going over on the Siakam, on a bunch of Siakam stuff, which we can discuss as we move forward.
Yeah, you mentioned that's light. I was hoping for 24.5, 25.5, but the juice at 23.5 under minus 125 at Bet Rivers, it's a stay away because he can go on a 6-0 run, something like that. But it's under or pass. But yeah, I was hoping for a bigger number too. And we could escape and kind of get cute, play the regression, do the dance like so many times people do or sharp bettors do. You got to bet against what you last saw, things like that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's just one of those things. Like I was saying before we started the show, it's like I'm not really that high on a lot of OKC player props, but I kind of feel like they're still going to win the game just because of their defensive effort, and they'll get stops when they need it, and they'll get turnovers and fast break points when they need it. I'm more looking at who's gonna be the big point scorers if Halliburton doesn't play, and I'm kind of leaning again. I've been on the Siakam train the whole series. He's been very good to me. He's covered most of the time. He's gone over 23 times at plus money, the points, rebounds, assists. Today, I already played over 21.5 at minus 105 for points. I played over 6.5 rebounds, minus 150. If you want to get that points, rebounds, assists, it's 35 over. I guess you get plus 115 maybe in that realm. If you want to go over 33 points, rebound, assists, you lay 125 juice. So I mean, the guy's got a bunch of assists every game. Like I mentioned, he had 3 in game 1, four in game 2 and 3, and 5 in game 4 and 5. So he's been a really good passer. And I think if he goes into that Knicks mode where he gets more shots, he takes high quality shots. He's a high field goal percentage shooter from inside the paint area, that elbow jumper. He has some good spots on the floor where he's going to have to be involved big time for them to have any chance. So I think all of those props going over, I really feel strongly about them. I don't think McConnell's going to have as big a game as he just had. So I think that leaves the onus to Siakam to come up with a big game.
Okay, so 21.5 at Bet Rivers minus 105. You're a supporter of that. Oh, 20.5 minus 124. Okay, so a little bit better there in terms of the number, but the juice. But at 20, it is on Bet Rivers at 21.5 minus 105. So you like that. Any other official plays in terms of players out there, the ones you ripped through in terms of, I know you said like your lean / plays, but you do like the Siakam over 21.5 minus 105. And anything else?
Yeah, I'm going to play I'm going to play all 3 Siakam props. I'm going to go over
Okay.
21.5 minus 105. I played over 6.5 minus 150 on the rebounds, and I'm probably going to play both the points, rebound, assists, 33 and 35. I think he has a big game. I think he takes more shots than he did all series long. Like I mentioned, he's only taken 50. He's only averaging 14 shots a game. Most of his the most attempts he's had all series of 15 in games 1, 4, and 5. So I think this is a game where they're going to just have to feed him due to the fact that Halliburton's not 100%. And I think Siakam's up to the challenge. He's a really solid player. I loved how he's played all series. And I think he has a big night at home tonight.
I would agree that he's sort of experienced enough. He has finals experience. He's an all-star. He knows the responsibility he has to go out there and take care of business with Halliburton nicked up. And, he's got the goods. He's got the skill set to do this and attack. And I know some people who were on him over 4.5 points in the first quarter last game. That market's moved to 5.5. So I do think he's a guy, he's fairly reliable in this situation, I would hope. And so I do like that aspect of things as well.
Yeah, he does get involved early. If you remember in game 3, he scored the first 6 points for the Pacers. He was off to a great start. He didn't have a lot of points that game, even though he did score the first 6, but he does get involved early in the first quarter. So he's a guy he's going to be touching the ball, and he gets to the line a lot, and he shoots it pretty decent from the free throw line. So I just feel like if Indiana has any chance to stay competitive in this game, due to the Halliburton injury, Siakam has to have a big game.
I agree. I think he's their only sort of like must going into this game. The bench guys can do their thing. Maybe Neesmith goes off like you were alluding to, but you can't do any of this without Siakam unless Halliburton just injected with something and plays well. It has to happen. So I mentioned a couple days ago, Holmgren over 8.5 rebounds, minus 139. I did that on Tuesday. I'm gonna keep going back to the well. Basically, it comes down to this. Once Dags changed the starting lineup and put Hartenstein at center, then Hartenstein becomes the one chasing Miles Turner around on defense when Turner's on the offensive side of the ball, hanging around the 3-point line. And that allows Holmgren to hang out near the hoop. So that's why I like the Holmgren. On top of that, I like Hartenstein under his points. We've been there the last couple games. It gets a little hairy, especially last game when OKC led the game with a dunk from Hartenstein. I was like, okay, so I'm basically under 4.5 because it was 6.5. But he didn't look at the hoop the rest of the game. So I like under 5.5 minus 129. I'm going to play that. Let's add that as well because he's just his focus on offense is setting screens around the perimeter and bounce passes to cutters or repositionings on the outside, like a Caruso reposition to a short corner three or something like that. Yes, there's a chance of Hartenstein offensive rebound putback. Yes, there's a chance that he gets the offensive rebound and gets fouled and goes to the line. But that's the risk you run. Like that's just the nature of betting. There is going to be a way you can lose a wager. There's nothing guaranteed. But typically, he's not looking at the hoop and he's only playing about 22 minutes. So I do like Hartenstein under 5.5 minus 129. We've clearly been ahead of the market on this a couple games. So I do like that. If you want to do a combination of points plus rebounds, I'm okay with it. I would stay away from the assist, though. That's his specialty. Over 2.5 plus money is intriguing, but he just doesn't play enough. But I do like on the road, they may not hit shots, but over 2.5 plus 140 ish for assists is, I mean, these are definitely under the radar bets, but I have to keep going back to Hartenstein under. I do think there's substance to this that even though the market's moved from 6.5 to 5.5.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the point that you made that he's gonna be chasing Turner around the 3-point line, that only helps Siakam get more rebounds as well too. So it's a nice little combo effort. I like that.
Yeah, and that's what I've been doing. I've been doing some. I think in the last show we did a same game parlay. I lowered Hartenstein to 8+ rebounds with Siakam 6+ rebounds. I felt they were correlated with Hartenstein starting. So that's something you can do to bring the juice down to like minus 108 and a lower threshold, right? You can get if the market's pretty tight, then you get under their projected number and you just have to, parlay them or whatever. But it's correlated, so that's why it is an angle for a same game parlay. So you mentioned Siakam, both the points and the rebounds individually. Anything else? Any flyers you want on some long shots? Like I think a Jalen Williams triple double, not the worst bet in the world, 90 to 1 if you can find it. If that gets posted there, Bet Rivers. There's some crazy stuff. I know you and I agree with the MVP odds. Bet Rivers, those odds makers are a little bit sharper than elsewhere. They're taxing SGA, which I think it should be minus 835. I think it's dead money to put anything on Jalen Williams at plus 650. I think inexperienced bettors will try to convince themselves that a plus 650 has value. But if you've been doing this as long as I have and you have, Chris, we know that the only way to bet this market, if you like the OKC side, is minus 835. There's no chance that Holmgren or Caruso or Dort are going to get any votes. So just don't even bother. It's minus 835, which is half the series price of 1667. That's the only thing I'd consider here at minus 835. I think it's smart that Bet Rivers is taxing this and has it much higher than the rest of the market.
Yeah, we talked about it right after the game on Monday night, and you were using that term that we don't like to use a lot, but you said it's free money that SGA is going to win the MVP, and it might not be free money if they somehow don't win the series, but
Right.
I wasn't
Right.
I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid to lay the minus 550. I got it at 550 on Monday night on SGA, pretty sizable bet, and I figure if I don't win that bet. The Pacers are going to win the series, and I have the Pacers at 14 to 1. So it's just a little bit of additional hedge where I can get a few more bucks off. I'm not going to lay 1,700 on OKC in the series at this point. That's absolutely insane. Why not just lay? Well, as Bet Rivers is smart enough, they've bumped it up to 835. That's a good number because they're not going to give it to Jalen Williams. I mean, the award is almost. I understand they gave it to Jaylen Brown last year, but Jaylen Brown outplayed Tatum the whole entire series. Jay Will's only outplayed SGA one game, and that's debatable. He had 40 points, but SGA had 10 assists. He's been all over the board too. I mean, the guy's averaging what, 32.7 points a game or something. I mean, he's the face of the team. He's moving into the face of the league thing. They're going to give him the Finals MVP if OKC wins. Um, at
The
eight,
league
at eight,
MVP. He's the league
yeah,
MVP.
he's the league. Yeah, he's also the only guy who was the scoring leader, the league MVP, and Finals MVP. It's only happened a couple times in the history of the NBA. So that's what's going to happen if OKC wins. And if they don't win, then I'm going to hit the other bet. So I'm very
Yeah,
confident if
it's
OKC wins, SGA is going to be getting the Bill Russell Trophy.
and the way human behavior is, you have to factor this in. There's only 9 voters as opposed to some of the league awards that have 50. So usually when there's 50, you'll see one sort of wild card vote for someone and try to be different and whatever. But when there's 9, it's a lot of herd mentality. So they don't want to be scrutinized because their votes are publicized. So they don't want to be scrutinized. This broadcast team's already on thin ice if you read some of the reports. So they're not going to try to be the Hubie Brown of voting Fred VanVleet the year Kawhi gets every other vote. So I mean, if I were making it over under, I'd give Jalen Williams a half vote under minus 250 because I think the most he can get is 1. So don't talk yourself into plus 650 just because the guy scored 40. To Chris's point, SGA had 31 and 10 in that same game, and he's been 30 plus in all the wins. He handles the ball the entire game. He's the head of the snake. Williams is open half the time because of SGA, and there's no sort of narrative like when Iguodala won it because he guarded LeBron the whole series, or um, anything else like kind of screwy. Like I said, there might be a Hubie Brown vote for Fred VanVleet or something, but yeah, whatever. But I do think on the other side, if you like the Pacers side, like Halliburton 32 to 1's not crazy because they need him to win the next 2 games. So then he's got to play well. He already is the game winner in game 1. So if you like the Pacers to come back, I would talk yourself into some of these longer shots, um, like Halliburton at 32 to 1. But I just don't think they have the goods to win the next 2 games without Halliburton. So any flyers for you on the Pacers side?
I wouldn't take a flyer on the Pacers side for MVP because I really don't. I mean, are they going to go into OKC and win? I don't think so. You're better off almost like, I don't know. I would say if you want to take a flyer on a long shot Pacer guy, how about Siakam tonight for most points in the game? That Rivers at
Yeah.
plus 950. I'm not sure I'm going to bet that, but I mean it's worth a shot. I mean he had the big game. He had 2 big games against the Knicks. He had the 38-point game. So it could happen if he gets, he gets a little bit more time, a little bit more. He got the big game against the Knicks. He only played 33 minutes. Maybe he has to play a little bit more tonight. He comes out of the game sometimes. I'm like, wow, why did they take him out? He was just getting into a little bit of a rhythm. So he could do it. And at plus 950, maybe Shea puts up 27. Maybe Jalen has 21. Maybe Siakam gets 30 and he's the high scorer, especially at home. I don't like, I would never lay Shea minus 300 on the road. That's kind of, I know he's averaging more than everyone else and he's the MVP, but to lay that on the road, I think Siakam is decent value at home, plus 950, maybe high 20 steals most points tonight.
I think that's a really sharp look. We've talked about it throughout a lot of these series. It's like, okay, maybe this guy won't lead the series in scoring, and that's a little lofty of a payout. But maybe we can sneak a bullet in there and catch him zagging when everyone's zigging and do a single game leading score. We saw that with Matherin in game 3. Well, Matherin's 50 to 1 tonight. Is he going to get the minutes if Halliburton can't give it a go or can only go 4 or 5 minutes? Is Matherin the guy at 50 to 1? I like your Siakam logic as well. There could be just balanced scoring with SGA and then everything runs through Siakam. I mean, just think about it. Hartenstein's 50 to 1. What's more likely Hartenstein or Matherin to lead the game in scoring, or McConnell? Like Hartenstein's not like the most he'll ever score is like 12, maybe 13. But Matherin can go off. Guys who shoot threes can go off, right? Neesmith is a guy at 50 to 1 I would consider just because he can have 7 threes or something insane like that. And with this, whenever there's unknown and giant unknowns, like with Halliburton's status, you always lean into it, lean into the variance. So yeah, on the over-unders, you may not want to lean into it. But when there's variance, you want to lean into the unknown. Like I would, top assist guy, stuff like that, McConnell, things like that you can sort of have some fun with And I like the top scorer market. I think that's a really good look for you, Chris. Like thinking outside the box.
Yeah, I mean, why not? We don't know what's going to happen in this game. And another thing, we've seen OKC have these clunkers on the road where they just kind of just let down. I mean, it's kind of crazy to say they're going to let down in a closeout game for the NBA Finals, but I've seen them do it before, and I could see them just saying, "Hey, we got the last game. We have the game 7 in our back pocket. We're going to be 10-point favorites. Maybe we just kind of just roll the ball out there and see what happens." And maybe they're not mentally or just they're just not up for the game. It sounds
Yeah, I
nuts,
mean, they
but
get a little jittery. They get a little jittery just knowing that they can win it, right?
yeah, yeah. I
It's
mean, they always say, "What's the toughest game?" The closeout game. So maybe for some reason they're just a little bit off and they're just taking it for granted. They're hearing all the talk. Oh, Halliburton's injured. Oh, we're in control of the series. We have game 7 at home in the worst case scenario. Yeah, maybe they're just not up to the challenge tonight, and they put in pedestrian efforts where SGA gets 24, Jalen gets 16, and Siakam steals it with 26 points or something. I could definitely see that scenario happening more than the odds suggest it could happen. That's basically my point on the
That's
value.
all you want, and that's all you want. Okay, we'll end that game 6 discussion on that note. Pivot to the W, where it's 2 tough kind of games to handicap. Mercury are catching 11.5 at New York, the defending champs coming off a comeback win when they were down 17 to the Dream. It's a big number for the Liberty to be laying, in my opinion. I really like this Mercury team. We talked about at the end of last show and how if you were going to take a flyer on a futures price, they're the team I would choose. Now, they're in the same elk of Seattle and Atlanta, but I think the Mercury having 3 like supreme all-stars with Copper just coming back and the pieces all fit with Wickham shooting and things like that. I think they could be a version of this year's Minnesota Lynx. They don't have the dominant stud like last year's Nafisa Collier, but they have 3 studs, in my opinion, and they all complement each other with Alyssa Thomas being sort of the Swiss Army knife triple double, more of a distributor. They are really good. I would bet the Mercury um, to win it all. I don't know if this spot is that great. I worry about their defense a little bit. This might be a step up in class. But remember, New York lost their starting guard, Phoebus, to overseas playing international ball. They just got Jonquel Jones back. I think they can crush him on the front line, but there's no way I'd lay the 11.5, although I do know a sharp guy who laid it. In terms of the Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever laying 11.5 on the road, look, they're much better than they were without her. I mean, drastically different, and that's why the MVP market shifted during the game the other day when she was bombing threes from the logo. I just think this Valkyries team's pretty good. They're an expansion team, but they're really well coached. Nakase is the front runner for Coach of the Year, and it's a big number, and they play hard, and the pieces all fit. What they did with the expansion drafts, they just got really smart players. They just took a bunch of people with a high IQ and who are good players, and they're making them all fit. And sometimes you play down to your opponent. So I could see the Fever kind of mailing it in this game and hoping, just kind of going through the motions, especially coming off the big sort of effort they had and the fracas or the scuffle in the last game. So I just worry a little bit about it in terms of the road game, and they got the aces on deck. I just don't know how excited they'll be for this game. So it's a big number. Anything situationally, Chris, that stands out? I know you're not the biggest WNBA fan, but obviously you know betting and situations.
I've been no, I'm not betting on either one of these games, but I am enjoying the fights every night on SportsCenter. I mean, it was the Kurt Rambis clothesline from hell the other night. No one was ejected either. I wish the NBA would. I don't know which one I like better. The NBA calling everything a flagrant, and kicking guys out of the game, or the WNBA just letting it all go. And it's been very entertaining. I hope they do protect Caitlin Clark, though. I mean, the abuse that she took the other night in her first game, was that her first game back, and she's getting forearm shift. She was
Second.
getting pinball.
Yeah.
Pinball, it was just, there's really no place in the game. I'm just surprised how physical the women's game is. It's just, it's been pretty intense the last couple of weeks on these highlights. So I would say both of these games. I don't know. You don't like the over? I think I would lean over on both of these games.
Quick whistle with the refs, and then there's fouls and stuff. I say this with going back to the fighting. Sabrina Ionescu said it best like a year ago or so. She's like, "Look, we're also competitors. Like, yes, we're ladies, when it's in social settings, but when we're on the court, we're trying to like, let's not forget." So, Angel Reese gets crazy and stuff. She's just another Garnett out there, just in terms of the psychoness and letting the opponent having a narrative. I'll always remember uh, Paul Pierce telling stories of Garnett saying like a random regular season game in January on like a Wednesday. He's like, that guy said this, that guy. And Pierce is like, no, he did. But like Garnett's talking himself up to get motivated. Jordan would do the same. I literally think Angel Reese does that too, just to maintain the intensity. And that's why there's such a crazy, trash talking between some of these players. And look, I like it. It's fine. It's basketball. We've all hooped. We've all gotten let players, opponents get under our skin. But you're right. Like there is much more physicality than you would think. I mean, uh, Clark was really annoyed because it was almost like Patrick Beverly with Westbrook, right? Just like when Westbrook got hurt with his knee, it's like, what are you doing? You're in charge of your own body. You can't just run into players. And so there's a little bit of there's a lot of tension there. So we'll see. Like maybe the over is the play in that regard. I think the Mercury are going to be able to score at will. So like I do kind of like the over in that game as well. That's a good look as well.
I like the intensity factor too, because one thing that drives me nuts about today's NBA is these guys are they're so ready as soon as the game ends to go hug and kiss the other guy. And I know it's sometimes in the old days, Magic and Isaiah, which that's another story. There's some other hugging and embracing once the guys do win the championship. But these guys are so ready to go over and hug LeBron as soon as the game ends, even though LeBron just dropped 40 on you. So I kind of do like the intensity and the rivalries. That's almost like I don't want to say it's like WWE, but there's like heroes and villains, and fans can, it's an easy way for fans to pick sides and who they root for and who they root against. And that's how it was in the 80s when, being a Celtics fan, you hated the Pistons. Okay. You didn't like the Lakers, but you hated the Pistons. And then, you moved on, other teams, like, the Heat Knicks rivalry, and then the Pacers Knicks. And those are real rivalries where the fan bases hated the other fan base and players disliked the other players. And there was skirmishes all the time. So, maybe they could clean it up a little bit, but I like the fact that there is some big rivalries developing between teams and individual players. And that's only good to build the brand. And hopefully someone came out and said everything's getting better with the WNBA except the officials. So maybe they just do an upgrade with the officials and make things a little bit evener. But we'll see what happens. It's exciting.
Nothing worse than WNBA officials. Truly, truly. Some of them are horrendous. But you're right. One buddy told me this about betting the NBA, and I think it applies for sure in the association. You just have to accept that you're going to care more about these games than the players. Maybe the regular season. It's like you do care. Like you're sweating out -5.5, and they don't care. Like the free throws at the end of the game, the dribble outs when you're losing. I've never understood that started happening 10 years ago or so. That's never made any sense, but it is what it is. Okay, that's going to do it for this edition. Chris, you're back on on the Bet Rivers Network tomorrow, but baseball, so betting weekly hardball with Adam the Bull. I'll be back in the fast break with Wes Reynolds. Maybe we'll have a game 7 to talk about for Sunday night. We'll see if Indy can circle the wagons and force a game 7 that, we all love as sports fans, but Wes, the perfect guy on for that one as our resident Hoosier and Pacers fan. But Chris, good stuff as always. Good luck with your wagers tonight and your futures market as well. Good luck to everyone else as well. For Chris and everyone else behind the scenes with graphics, producing, research, everything that it makes it all look so good, the true heavy lifting. I'm Doug Kezirian. We'll see you back here tomorrow.